The boss's son froze when he saw his missing sister's ring in the waitress's hand. The afternoon light filtered through the white linen curtains of Terra Nobre, casting soft golden patterns across the polished wooden tables. Andrew Harrington sat alone in the corner booth, the one that offered a view of the entire restaurant but kept him partially hidden from curious eyes. He'd been coming here for years. It was quiet, elegant, and most importantly, nobody bothered him with small talk about his father's business empire, or asked when he'd finally settle down. At 28, Andrew had learned to appreciate solitude. It was easier than explaining to people why he sometimes got this faraway look in his eyes, why certain songs made him leave rooms abruptly, why he never celebrated his birthday with the enthusiasm everyone expected. He was absently studying the wine list when it happened. A slender hand, tanned and work-worn, placed a crystal water pitcher on his table. Andrew barely glanced up. Just another server doing their job. But then something caught the light. A flash of silver, a glint that made his heart skip before his brain could process why. His eyes locked onto her hand. There, on her right ring finger, sat a silver ring. Not just any ring. That ring. 2 intertwined hearts with a small turquoise stone nestled in the center. The metalwork slightly worn but unmistakable. The same unique design. The same artisan craftsmanship. The same impossible piece of jewelry that should only exist in 2 places in the entire world. One in his bedroom safe, one lost 20 years ago. Time stopped. Andrew's breath caught in his throat. His hands began to tremble. The wine list slipped from his fingers and landed on the table with a soft thud that seemed to echo in his ears like thunder. His vision blurred at the edges, the restaurant spinning slightly as a wave of dizziness washed over him. No, it can't be. It's impossible. He forced his gaze upward, following the line of her arm to her face. She was young, his age maybe, dark hair pulled back in a thick braid, a few loose strands framing a face that was tired but serene. Her skin was olive-toned, her features delicate, but showing the wear of someone who'd lived a hard life. She wore the restaurant's simple uniform, white blouse, black slacks, a small name tag that read, Valerie, but it was her eyes that hit him like a punch to the gut. Deep brown, almost black, with that same slight downward tilt at the outer corners. The same eyes he used to see in the mirror when he was 8 years old. The same eyes that had looked at him from across the breakfast table every morning of his childhood until that terrible day. "Sir, are you feeling all right?" Her voice was soft, slightly musical, with just a hint of concern. Andrew opened his mouth, but no words came out. His throat had closed up completely. He lifted a shaking hand and pointed at her ring, his finger trembling so badly he had to steady it with his other hand. "That ring," he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where did you get that ring?" Valerie looked down at her hand, as if she'd forgotten she was wearing it. A shadow crossed her face, something between confusion and defensiveness. She instinctively covered the ring with her other hand, a protective gesture. It's mine. I've always had it," she said carefully. "I'm sorry. Is there something else you need?" "No, wait." Andrew half stood from his seat, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Several nearby diners turned to look. "Please, I just need to know where you got it. It's important. God, you don't understand how important it is." But Valerie was already backing away, her expression shifting from concern to alarm. "I'm sorry, sir. I need to check on my other tables." She turned and disappeared into the kitchen before Andrew could say another word. He stood there frozen, his heart hammering against his ribs so hard he thought it might break through. Other diners were definitely staring now. He sat back down slowly, his legs suddenly too weak to support him. 20 years since Sophia disappeared. The memories came flooding back, uninvited and overwhelming. He was 8 years old again, standing in the crowded farmer's market, holding his mother's hand. Sophia had been right there, just moments before, admiring a table of handmade jewelry while their parents argued with a vendor about the price of some ceramic pots. Andrew had let go of his mother's hand for just a second, just 1 second to pick up a toy car from a nearby stall. When he turned back, Sophia was gone. Gone. They'd searched for hours, days, weeks, months, years. His mother, Eleanor, had never been the same. The grief had literally broken her heart. She'd had her first cardiac episode 6 months after Sophia vanished. His father, Michael, had transformed from a warm, laughing man into someone cold and distant, throwing himself into work as if building a bigger empire could somehow fill the void his daughter left behind. And Andrew had grown up carrying the weight of survival guilt. Why had he been the one who stayed? Why hadn't he protected her? Why couldn't he remember anything useful about that day? The rings had been a gift from their grandmother, Lucille, just before she died. "So you'll never forget each other," she'd said, slipping the matching bands onto their small fingers. 2 hearts, 1 soul. Andrew had kept his ring locked away, unable to wear it, unable to throw it away. A memorial to a sister who existed somewhere between memory and ghost. And now, 20 years later, an identical ring sat on the finger of a stranger named Valerie. Andrew pulled out his phone with shaking hands and opened his photo gallery. He scrolled back, past recent business dinners and family gatherings, past last year's photos, back and back until he found the folder he rarely opened, the one labeled simply Sophia. He tapped on a photo taken just weeks before she disappeared. 2 kids with identical faces grinning at the camera, arms around each other, each holding up their right hands to show matching silver rings catching the sunlight. Andrew zoomed in on Sophia's face, the same eyes, the same slight gap between her front teeth that Valerie had. He'd noticed it when she spoke, the same way of tilting her head slightly to the left when she was uncertain. His hands trembled as he put the phone down. This wasn't coincidence. It couldn't be. That ring was unique, custom made by an artisan who'd died years ago. There were only 2 in the entire world, and one of them had just walked past his table. Andrew sat in that restaurant for another 2 hours, nursing a glass of wine he barely tasted, watching Valerie move between tables. She avoided his section for the rest of the evening, always finding reasons to send other servers his way. But whenever she thought he wasn't looking, he caught her glancing in his direction, a puzzled expression on her face, as if she too felt something strange in the air between them. When he finally left, Andrew sat in his car in the parking lot for a long time, staring at his grandmother's ring in the palm of his hand. The turquoise stone gleamed in the streetlight. 2 silver hearts intertwined forever. Somewhere in that restaurant, an identical ring was closing up in someone's locker. Someone who didn't know, couldn't possibly know, that she might be the answer to 20 years of desperate prayers. Andrew drove home in a daze. That night, he didn't sleep at all. Andrew returned to Terra Nobre the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. He told himself he needed to be sure, needed to observe, to gather information, to approach this rationally. But the truth was simpler and more desperate. He couldn't stay away. Every fiber of his being screamed that this woman, this stranger named Valerie, held the key to something he'd been searching for his entire adult life. He learned her schedule quickly. She worked the lunch and dinner shifts Tuesday through Saturday, arriving on a beat-up bicycle around 10:30 each morning, always wearing jeans and a faded hoodie that she'd change out of in the staff room. She kept her head down when she walked, like someone used to being invisible. Andrew watched from his car across the street, feeling like a creep, but unable to stop himself. He noticed the way she locked her bike to the same post every day, the way she always checked her phone twice before going inside, the way she sometimes paused at the door and took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for something difficult. On the 4th day, he finally went inside during her shift again. He requested a different section this time, somewhere he could observe without making her uncomfortable. She noticed him immediately. He saw the recognition flash across her face, followed by wariness. But she didn't run. She just kept working, avoiding his area of the restaurant with practiced efficiency. He ordered coffee, then lunch, then more coffee. The hours crawled by around 3 o'clock, when the lunch rush had died down and the restaurant had gone quiet. Andrew saw her step outside for what looked like a break, his heart hammering. He left cash on the table, far more than necessary, and followed. She was sitting on a bench in the small park adjacent to the restaurant, eating a sandwich from a brown paper bag. When Andrew's shadow fell across her, she looked up, and he saw resignation in her eyes, like she'd been expecting this. "Please don't call the police," Andrew said quickly, holding up his hands. "I know this looks bad. I know I've been around a lot. But I'm not dangerous, I swear. I just need 5 minutes. 5 minutes to explain why that ring matters so much to me. Valerie stared at him for a long moment, then sighed and gestured to the other end of the bench. 5 minutes. Then you leave me alone. Deal. Deal. Andrew sat down, careful to keep distance between them. His hands were shaking again. He'd rehearsed this conversation 100 times in his head. But now that the moment was here, all his carefully prepared words vanished. So instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small blue velvet box. Valerie's eyes widened slightly as he opened it. Inside, catching the afternoon light, was a ring identical to hers. 2 intertwined silver hearts, a small turquoise stone in the center, the same worn patina that spoke of age and handling. The sandwich slipped from Valerie's fingers. How? She whispered. How do you have that? My grandmother gave it to me when I was 7 years old, Andrew said, his voice thick with emotion. She gave one to me and one to my twin sister. They were custom made by an artisan from up north, a man who died about 15 years ago. He only ever made 2. Just 2. These 2. Valerie was staring at the ring in the box like it might bite her. That's not possible. My sister's name was Sophia. Andrew's voice cracked. 20 years ago, when we were 8, we went to a farmer's market with our parents. There was a crowd and noise, and my parents were distracted. Sophia wandered off. We looked everywhere, but she was just gone. We never found her, never found a body, never found any trace. She just vanished like smoke. He watched Valerie's face carefully. She'd gone pale, her breathing shallow. The police said she was probably taken. Kidnapped. My parents hired private investigators, put up billboards, offered rewards. Nothing. It's been 20 years of nothing. Andrew paused, then added softly, Sophia was wearing that ring when she disappeared, and now you're wearing it. Valerie shook her head slowly, but Andrew could see her hand unconsciously moving to touch the ring, a protective gesture. No, you've got it wrong. This ring is mine. I've had it since. She trailed off, uncertainty clouding her features. Since when? Andrew pressed gently. I don't know, Valerie admitted, her voice barely audible. I don't remember, I've always had it, as long as I can remember. How long is that? How far back do your memories go? Valerie stood abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself. I need to get back to work. Please. Andrew stood too, but kept his distance. Just tell me your age, that's all. How old are you? She hesitated. Then, 28? I'm 28. So am I. Andrew's heart was racing. When's your birthday? I don't know my real birthday. The people at the orphanage just picked a date. She said it matter-of-factly, but Andrew heard the pain underneath. Orphanage? Valerie looked at him with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than 28. I grew up at St. Catherine's Home for Children, about 200 miles south of here. They found me at a bus station when I was 8 years old. Alone. No-eyed. Couldn't tell them my name or where I came from. The doctors said I'd had some kind of head trauma. I'd lost my memory. Everything before that day was just blank. Andrew felt like the ground was tilting beneath his feet. 8 years old. 20 years ago. It was a long time ago, Valerie said, but her voice wavered. It doesn't mean anything. The ring could be a coincidence. Maybe there were more than 2 made. Maybe someone stole it and sold it, and somehow it ended up with me. Maybe... Look at me, Andrew interrupted. He pulled out his phone and opened the photo he'd been staring at for 4 nights straight. This is Sophia. This is my sister. He turned the screen toward Valerie. She looked, and Andrew watched the color drain completely from her face. The photo showed 2 identical children, grinning at the camera, holding up their right hands to display matching rings. The girl's face, Sophia's face, could have been Valerie's childhood photo. The same eyes, the same smile, the same slight gap between the front teeth. Oh my God, Valerie whispered. I need you to take a DNA test, Andrew said urgently. Please, I know this is insane. I know you probably think I'm crazy, or that this is some kind of scam. But that ring, your age, the amnesia, the timing, it all fits. Everything fits. Valerie was staring at the photo, her breathing ragged. "And if I'm not her, if it's all just a terrible coincidence, then we'll know, and I'll apologize for disrupting your life, and I'll never bother you again." Andrew's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "But if you are her, if you're Sophia, you've been lost for 20 years, and you deserve to know the truth." A tear rolled down Valerie's cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "I have a life. It's not much, but it's mine. I have friends, a job, a routine. What if finding out the truth destroys all that? What if not finding out means you never know who you really are?" They stood in silence, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the park. Somewhere nearby, a car horn honked. A dog barked. Life continued, oblivious to the fact that two people's worlds were colliding in this quiet moment. Finally, Valerie took a deep breath. "I need time to think about this." "Of course. Take all the time you need." Andrew pulled a business card from his wallet and held it out. "My number. Call me when you're ready. Or don't call. Whatever you decide. I'll respect it." Valerie took the card with trembling fingers, stared at it for a moment, then slipped it into her pocket. Without another word, she turned and walked back toward the restaurant. Andrew watched her go, his heart breaking and soaring at the same time. He'd found her. After 20 years of prayers and nightmares and impossible hope, he'd found her. Now he just had to prove it. 3 days passed with no word from Valerie. Andrew barely slept, jumping every time his phone buzzed, his heart sinking when it was just another work email, or his mother asking if he'd be home for dinner. He didn't tell his parents anything. How could he? What would he even say? "Hey Mom, Dad, I think I found Sophia working as a waitress. But I'm not sure yet. So let's just sit tight while I potentially destroy you all over again with false hope." No, he couldn't do that to them. Not until he was absolutely certain. On the 4th day, his phone rang at 2 a.m. Andrew lunged for it, nearly knocking over the lamp on his nightstand. "Hello? It's me, Valerie." Her voice was small, uncertain. "I'll do it. The DNA test. I'll do it." Andrew sat up, suddenly wide awake despite the hour. "Thank you, God. Thank you when... Tomorrow I have the morning off. But I need you to understand something." She paused, and he heard her take a shaky breath. "I'm terrified. I've spent my whole life being nobody, coming from nowhere. And now you're telling me I might be somebody, from somewhere, that I might have a family who's been looking for me. And if it's true, if I really am your sister, everything I thought I knew about myself is a lie." "I know," Andrew said softly. "I'm scared too." Why would you be scared?" "Because what if you're not her?" The words came out before he could stop them. "What if I'm wrong, and I'm about to go through losing her all over again? What if this hope I'm feeling right now is just setting me up for another 20 years of grief?" There was silence on the other end. Then, "I guess we're both taking a leap of faith." "I guess we are." They arranged to meet at a private medical facility Andrew had researched. He'd specifically chosen one known for discretion. No need for this to leak to the press, or worse, to anyone in his family before he was ready. The test itself would be simple. A cheek swab, some paperwork, and then the excruciating wait for results. Andrew arrived early, pacing the waiting room like a caged animal. When Valerie walked in, she looked even more nervous than he felt. She'd dressed carefully, clean jeans, a simple blue sweater, but her hands were shaking as she signed the consent forms. "How long until we know?" she asked the lab technician. "Rush processing, given the circumstances. We're looking at about 5 to 7 days. 7 days? A week." Andrew thought he might actually lose his mind. The procedure was quick and painless. 2 swabs, some forms, a vial of blood for backup confirmation. Done. Now nothing to do but wait. As they walked out into the parking lot, Valerie turned to him. "What happens now?" "Now we wait, and try not to go crazy in the meantime." She almost smiled. Easier said than done. Then her expression grew serious. "Andrew, if this comes back positive, if I really am your sister, are your parents going to want to meet me right away? Because I don't know if I can handle that, not immediately." "We'll take it at whatever pace you need," Andrew assured her. "I haven't told them anything yet. I wanted to wait until we knew for sure." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you. I just need time to process, to figure out who I am if I'm not who I thought I was." They said goodbye in the parking lot, and Andrew drove home in a daze. The next 7 days were going to be the longest of his life. He tried to maintain his normal routine, went to the office at Harrington Industries, sat through meetings, reviewed contracts, but his mind was always elsewhere, calculating the hours until the results would arrive. His assistant asked twice if he was feeling all right. He blamed it on a stomach bug and buried himself in paperwork. On day 3, his cousin Rebecca stopped by his office. She was 7 years older than Andrew, polished and professional in her tailored suit, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist. She'd basically become his father's right hand after Sophia disappeared, filling the void the family tragedy had left. Andrew had always been close to her. She was more like an older sister than a cousin. "You look terrible," she said, without preamble, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Thanks, Becca. You always know just what to say." "I'm serious. You've been distracted for over a week now. Dad mentioned you've been blowing off dinner invitations. Your mom called me yesterday, worried." She studied him with sharp, intelligent eyes. "What's going on?" Andrew's throat tightened. Rebecca had been 15 when Sophia disappeared. She'd helped search, had held Eleanor while she sobbed, had been there through all the worst moments. If anyone deserved to know what he was investigating, it was her. But something made him hesitate. Maybe it was the fear of getting it wrong. Maybe it was protective instinct. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Just work stress. He lied. "Some complicated merger stuff." Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't push. "Well, whatever it is, don't let it consume you. I've seen what happens when this family fixates on things we can't control. It doesn't end well." She meant Sophia. Of course, she meant the years of fruitless searching, the investigators who found nothing, the psychics who were all frauds, the false leads that went nowhere. She meant the way it had nearly destroyed his parents' marriage and had left permanent scars on everyone. After Rebecca left, Andrew sat at his desk, staring at nothing. She was right. Of course, obsession had nearly killed his family once before. What if he was setting them all up for another devastating fall? But then he thought of Valerie's face when she'd seen that childhood photo. The shock, the recognition, the way her hand had unconsciously moved to touch the ring. That wasn't nothing. That meant something. Days 4 and 5 crawled by. Andrew found himself Googling information about amnesia, head trauma, memory recovery. He learned that childhood memories could return spontaneously, triggered by familiar faces or places or objects. He learned that the brain sometimes suppressed traumatic memories as a protective mechanism. He learned that 8 years old was right at the edge of when long-term memories typically began forming reliably. Everything he read made it seem more possible, more real. On day 6, Andrew was reviewing documents in the library at the family estate when he heard voices in the hallway, his mother and Rebecca talking in low tones. He wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but Rebecca's words drifted through the partially open door. "Something's going on with Andrew. I'm worried about him, Aunt Eleanor. He's been acting strange." "Strange how?" His mother's voice, tired and concerned, secretive, distant. "I tried to talk to him at the office, but he shut me down." Andrew's jaw clenched. He should have known Rebecca would notice. She noticed everything. "Do you think it's about Sophia?" Eleanor asked, and Andrew's breath caught. Today would have been her birthday, their birthday. Maybe it's hitting him harder this year. He'd forgotten. With everything happening, he'd actually forgotten that tomorrow, day 7, would have been their 29th birthday, the day that was always bittersweet, celebrating one twin while mourning the other. "Maybe," Rebecca said carefully, "but I think it might be something else. I'm going to keep an eye on him." Andrew waited until their footsteps faded before letting out the breath he'd been holding. He couldn't keep this secret much longer. The results would arrive tomorrow, on his birthday, of all days. And then everything would change. That night, Andrew took out the blue velvet box and stared at his grandmother's ring. Tomorrow, he'd finally know. Tomorrow, after 20 years of questions, he'd have an answer. He just wasn't sure he was ready for what that answer might be. His phone lit up with a text message. "Can't sleep. Too nervous. Tomorrow feels like it's going to change everything." V. Andrew typed back, "Me too. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, thank you for not giving up. Even if this turns out to be nothing, thank you for trying. But it wasn't nothing. Andrew could feel it in his bones. Tomorrow, when those results came back, he was going to get his sister back. He had to believe that, because the alternative, that this was just another false hope, another dead end, was too painful to consider. The envelope arrived at 9:47 a.m. Andrew had been sitting in his car outside the medical facility since they opened at 8, unable to wait at home, unable to pretend this was just another day, when the receptionist called to say his results were ready. His hands shook so badly he could barely turn the key in the ignition. Inside, the lab director, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Patricia Chen, met him in a private consultation room. She held a manila folder, and Andrew couldn't take his eyes off it. "Mr. Harrington," she began gently, "I understand this test carries significant emotional weight for you. Just tell me," Andrew said, his voice hoarse. "Please, I can't take another second of not knowing." Dr. Chen opened the folder and slid a document across the table. Andrew's eyes scanned the page, stumbling over medical terminology and percentage markers until he found the line that mattered: probability of siblingship. 99.9%. The world tilted sideways. "You share approximately 50% of your DNA with the subject, Doctor," Chen explained, her voice seeming to come from very far away. "This is consistent with full siblings. The markers we tested show identical matches in areas that confirm you share both biological parents. Mr. Harrington, there is no doubt Valerie is your sister." Andrew couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except stare at that number. 99.9%. Not doubt, not maybe, certainty. Sophia was alive. His sister was alive. "Mr. Harrington, are you all right? Would you like some water?" Andrew realized he was crying. Tears were streaming down his face, and he was making sounds he couldn't control. Half sobs, half laughter, all relief and joy and overwhelming, crushing gratitude. "She's alive," he whispered. "Oh God, she's alive." Dr. Chen smiled, her own eyes suspiciously bright. "Yes, she is." "Congratulations!" Andrew took a copy of the results with hands that wouldn't stop shaking and stumbled out to his car. He sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, just breathing, just existing in this new reality where the impossible had become real. Then he called Valerie. She answered on the first ring. "Do you know?" "Yes." His voice cracked. "It's positive, you're..." "Valerie, you're my sister. You're Sophia." Silence. Then a sound that might have been a gasp or a sob or both. "I'm going to come get you," Andrew said. "Right now. Where are you?" "I'm at home, Andrew. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to feel." "Neither do I, but we'll figure it out together. I'm on my way." The drive to Valerie's address took 20 minutes. She lived in a small house on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where 3 or 4 people split rent to make ends meet. When Andrew pulled up, she was sitting on the front steps, still in her pajamas, an old t-shirt and sweatpants, looking lost and small and scared. He got out of the car, and for a moment they just stared at each other. Then Valerie stood, and Andrew closed the distance between them, and they were hugging, really hugging, for the first time in 20 years. She felt fragile in his arms, like she might break, but she was also solid, real, here, not a ghost, not a memory, his sister. "I'm sorry," Valerie sobbed into his shoulder. "I'm sorry I don't remember you. I'm sorry I don't remember anything. Don't apologize. None of this is your fault, none of it." Andrew pulled back to look at her face, really look at it. "You're here. That's all that matters. You're here, and you're safe. And I'm never letting you disappear again." They stood in her tiny front yard for a long time, just holding each other while the morning sun climbed higher. Neighbors walking by stared, but Andrew didn't care. Let them stare. His sister was alive. Finally, Valerie pulled back, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her shirt. "Your parents? They need to know. When are you going to tell them? Today? Now? I want you to come with me." Terror flashed across her face. "Andrew, I can't. I'm not ready. I don't even know them." "They're our parents," Andrew said gently, "and they've been waiting for this moment for 20 years. I know you're scared, but they deserve to meet you. We can take it slow, I promise." But Valerie, Sophia, they need to know you're alive. She wrapped her arms around herself, looking like she might bolt. What if they don't believe it? What if they think I'm some kind of imposter trying to steal their daughter's identity? I have the DNA results, scientific proof. They'll believe it. What if they expect me to be someone I'm not? I'm not the little girl they lost, Andrew. I'm a stranger. I grew up in foster care. I work as a waitress. I live in a house with a leaky roof and roommates who party too loud. I'm not what they'll be expecting. Andrew took her hands in his. You're their daughter, that's all you need to be. After another hour of gentle persuasion and several panic attacks, Valerie finally agreed. She changed into clean clothes, jeans and a simple blouse, and got into Andrew's car with the resigned air of someone heading to their own execution. The drive to the Harrington estate took 45 minutes. Andrew called ahead, telling his mother he was bringing someone important, asking her to make sure his father was home. Eleanor had sounded confused but agreed. As they turned onto the long driveway leading to the house, Valerie went pale. Andrew, this is a mansion. It's home, he said simply. And it's your home too. I can't do this. I can't. Yes, you can. I'm right here with you. The house loomed ahead, 3 stories of stone and history. Surrounded by manicured gardens, Andrew parked near the front entrance and turned to Valerie. She was gripping the door handle so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Ready? He asked. No, but let's do it anyway. Eleanor was waiting in the foyer when they entered. She was a small woman, elegant even in casual clothes, her blonde hair showing streaks of gray. When she saw Andrew, she smiled, but the smile faltered when she noticed Valerie behind him. Andrew, who's this? Before Andrew could answer, his father appeared from the study. Michael Harrington was tall and imposing, his presence filling the room even before he spoke. He looked at Valerie with polite confusion. Son, what's going on? Andrew took a deep breath. Mom, Dad, I need you both to sit down. Something in his voice made them comply immediately. Eleanor sank onto the antique settee in the hallway, Michael standing protectively behind her, one hand on her shoulder. Andrew gently guided Valerie forward. This is Valerie. She's... Mom, Dad, she's Sophia. I had DNA testing done. She's our Sophia. She's alive. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Eleanor's face went completely white. She stared at Valerie, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Michael's hand tightened on his wife's shoulder, his own face a mask of shock. That's not possible, Michael said, but his voice was uncertain. Look at her, Andrew urged. Really look at her. Eleanor stood on trembling legs, taking a step toward Valerie, then another. She raised a shaking hand toward Valerie's face, and Valerie, terrified, stood frozen, letting this stranger touch her cheek. The gap in her teeth, Eleanor whispered. You always had a gap between your front teeth. The doctor wanted to fix it, but you wouldn't let him. Valerie's eyes widened. I still have it. I never wanted braces. Eleanor's breath caught. Her fingers traced Valerie's face like she was memorizing it, or maybe remembering it. Your eyes, you have your father's eyes, and that birthmark. Her hand moved to Valerie's left wrist, pushing up the sleeve to reveal a small, crescent-shaped mark. Oh my God, it's real. And then Eleanor collapsed. Michael caught her, easing her down to the settee as she gasped for air, her hand pressed to her chest. Andrew rushed forward, but Eleanor waved him away. I'm all right, she managed. I'm all right. Michael, look at her. It's our baby. Our baby girl came home. Michael was staring at Valerie with tears streaming down his face. This powerful man reduced to a sobbing father who'd just gotten his daughter back from the dead. He didn't say anything. He just opened his arms. Valerie looked at Andrew, terrified. He nodded encouragingly, and then, hesitantly, she stepped into her father's embrace. Michael held her like she might disappear again if he let go, great shuddering sobs shaking his entire frame. Eleanor joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them, and Andrew found himself part of the embrace too, all 4 of them holding each other while 20 years of grief finally began to heal. The reunion should have been perfect, should have been the happy ending to a 20-year nightmare. But less than an hour into Sophia's homecoming, Reality crashed through the door in the form of Rebecca Moore. She swept into the sitting room where the family had gathered, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. Andrew had forgotten that Rebecca often dropped by on Tuesdays to review business matters with Michael. One look at her face told him she'd already heard something. "Uncle Michael, I just got a very strange call from Dr. Chen's office confirming a DNA test was processed under the family account." Rebecca's voice was pleasant, but her eyes were hard. "Would someone like to tell me what's going on?" Eleanor, still holding Sophia's hand like a lifeline, looked up with tears streaming down her face. "Rebecca, it's a miracle. Sophia's alive. She's come home." Rebecca's gaze shifted to Valerie, and Andrew saw something flash across his cousin's face. Shock. Yes, but also something darker. Something that looked almost like fear. "I'm sorry, what?" Rebecca's laugh was sharp. "Aunt Eleanor, that's not Sophia, that's... Who is this woman?" "Her name is Valerie," Michael said, his voice firm despite the emotion straining it. "And the DNA test confirms she's our daughter." "DNA tests can be faked," Rebecca said immediately. "Uncle Michael, with all due respect, you're not thinking clearly. This is obviously some kind of scam. How convenient that a woman shows up claiming to be Sophia just when the trust fund would have matured." "Nobody claimed anything," Andrew cut in, his voice cold. "I found her. I saw Sophia's ring and investigated. The DNA testing was done at a certified independent lab with no connection to our family." Rebecca turned her sharp gaze on him. "You found her? How long have you been investigating this without telling anyone? And you," she looked at Valerie, "how much did you agree to pay her if she played along?" Sophia flinched like she'd been slapped. "I don't want your money. I didn't even know who the Harringtons were until a week ago." "A likely story." Rebecca pulled out her phone. "I'm calling our lawyers. We need a second opinion, a second test from a lab we choose. This could be identity fraud, extortion." "Rebecca, that's enough." Michael's voice boomed through the room, silencing everyone. "This is my daughter. I don't need a lawyer to tell me what I can see with my own eyes." But doubt had been planted. Andrew saw it in the way his mother's grip on Sophia's hand loosened slightly, the way uncertainty crept into her expression. 20 years of disappointment and false leads had taught the Harringtons to be cautious with hope. "Michael," Rebecca said more gently, "I understand wanting to believe, but we've been down this road before. Remember that woman in Nevada? Or the girl in Florida? Both times you were so sure, and both times it was people trying to take advantage of your grief. This is different," Andrew insisted. "The DNA can be verified with a second test, if she's really Sophia. She won't object to that, right?" Rebecca looked at Valerie with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sophia stood abruptly, her face pale. "I should go. This was a mistake." "No. Sweetheart, wait." Eleanor reached for her, but Sophia was already backing toward the door. "Your cousin is right. You need to be sure. I'll take whatever tests you want." Her voice was shaking. "But I can't stay here right now. It's too much." Andrew followed her out, leaving behind a room thick with tension. In the driveway, Sophia was already pulling out her phone to call a ride. "Don't let her get to you," Andrew said. "Rebecca's just protective. She'll come around once we do the second test." "Will she?" Sophia looked at him with eyes full of hurt. "Or will there always be doubt? Will I always be the imposter who showed up claiming to be the dead daughter?" "You're not dead, you're right here." "Am I, though?" Sophia's voice rose. "I don't remember being Sophia Harrington. I don't remember this house or that woman crying over me or any of it. Maybe your cousin is right. Maybe I'm just Valerie, a nobody with a stolen ring and amnesia. And you've built this whole fantasy around me because you want your sister back so badly. The DNA doesn't lie. Then we'll do another test. And another. And another, until everyone believes it." "But Andrew," she looked at him with exhausted eyes, "I'm not sure I belong here. Look at this place. Look at your family. I don't fit into this world." Before Andrew could respond, Rebecca appeared on the front steps. "Valerie, wait. I apologize if I seemed harsh. You have to understand. We've been burned before. But if you're willing to do a second test at the hospital, at our family's facility, then I'm willing to admit I might be wrong." It was an olive branch, but Andrew didn't trust it. He knew Rebecca too well. She was strategic, always thinking 3 moves ahead. This sudden reasonableness felt calculated. But Sophia, desperate to prove herself, nodded. Fine. When? Tomorrow I'll arrange everything. The second test was conducted at Harrington Memorial Hospital, the same facility where the twins had been born. Rebecca had personally selected the lab technicians and observed the entire process. Andrew noticed she took photos of everything, the samples being collected, the chain of custody forms, the sealed vials, just ensuring transparency, she said when she caught him watching. The results would take another 3 days. 3 more days of uncertainty. Of Sophia staying in a hotel because she couldn't bear to be in the mansion while doubt still lingered. Of Eleanor calling Andrew every few hours, asking if he was absolutely sure. Of Michael retreating into his study and his work. Rebecca, meanwhile, had launched her own investigation. Andrew discovered this on the second day when his contact at the private detective agency called to warn him. Mr. Harrington, I thought you should know someone else has been asking questions about Valerie Morrison. They've requested her complete orphanage records, medical history, employment background, everything. The inquiry came through legal channels, so I couldn't block it. But the billing went to Moore and Associates, Rebecca's law firm. Andrew felt cold fury wash over him. He confronted her that afternoon at the office. Why are you investigating her? Rebecca didn't look up from her computer. Due diligence. If she's going to be part of this family, we need to know everything about her background. What if there are legal issues? Criminal history, debts. I'm protecting this family, Andrew. You're trying to discredit her. I'm being thorough. Rebecca finally met his eyes. Look, I know you want to believe. We all do. But I've been part of this family through every false hope, every heartbreak. I watched your mother nearly die from grief. I held Uncle Michael when he broke down after the 10th failed lead. I'm not going through that again unless I'm absolutely certain. There was something in her voice that gave Andrew pause. She sounded genuinely protective, genuinely worried. Maybe he was being unfair. Maybe she really was just trying to help. The DNA test will confirm everything, he said, softer now. Then we have nothing to worry about. But that night, Andrew couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He kept replaying Rebecca's reaction to seeing Sophia for the first time. The shock on her face hadn't just been surprise. It had been recognition and fear. He called the detective. I need you to look into something else. Rebecca Moore's movements 20 years ago. Specifically around the time Sophia disappeared. That's a long time ago, Mr. Harrington. Records might be incomplete. Try anyway, please. On day 3, the second DNA results arrived. Andrew, his parents, Rebecca, and Sophia gathered in Michael's study. Dr. Morrison from the hospital delivered them personally. The results are conclusive, he announced. Valerie Morrison is genetically the daughter of Michael and Eleanor Harrington, and the full sibling of Andrew Harrington. There is no doubt whatsoever. Eleanor sobbed with relief. Michael closed his eyes and whispered something that might have been a prayer. Andrew felt vindication surge through him. Rebecca stared at the report for a long moment. Then, slowly, she set it down. Well, I suppose that settles it. Welcome to the family. Sophia. But her smile didn't reach her eyes, and Andrew noticed her hands were trembling slightly as she gathered her things to leave. Rebecca, Michael called after her. You've been like a daughter to us these past 20 years. That doesn't change. You know that, right? Something flickered across Rebecca's face. Pain, longing, and that same fear Andrew had seen before. Of course, Uncle Michael. I'm happy for you all, truly. She left quickly, and Andrew watched her go with growing unease. His phone buzzed with a text from the detective. Found something interesting about Rebecca Moore's whereabouts the week Sophia disappeared. Can we meet? Andrew looked at Sophia, who was finally truly smiling as Eleanor showed her childhood photos. His family was whole again. The nightmare was over. So why did he feel like it was just beginning? Sophia had been living at the Harrington estate for 2 weeks when the nightmares started. The first one came on a Tuesday night. She woke screaming, tangled in silk sheets that cost more than a month's rent at her old place. Her heart hammering against her ribs. Eleanor came running, Michael close behind, both of them looking terrified that they'd lost her again somehow. I'm sorry, Sophia gasped, trying to catch her breath. I'm sorry, there was a dream, a memory. Maybe, I don't know. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing Sophia's sweat-dampened hair. What did you see, sweetheart? Crowds, lots of people and colors, bright colors everywhere like fabric or balloons. And I was scared. Someone was pulling me away from something. And I was trying to scream, but nothing came out. Michael's face went pale. The farmer's market. You're remembering the day you disappeared. After that, the memories came more frequently, always in fragments, always leaving Sophia shaken and confused. She'd be having breakfast and suddenly smell something, roasted nuts maybe, or fresh bread, and she'd freeze, lost in a flash of sensation she couldn't quite grasp. She'd see her reflection and have a moment of disorientation, like she was looking at a stranger wearing her face. Andrew watched it all with growing concern. His sister was here, physically present, but she seemed to be drifting further away, caught between two identities that didn't quite fit together. Eleanor tried to help by showing Sophia old photographs. Hoping to trigger recognition, they spent hours in the library, going through albums filled with images of a childhood Sophia couldn't remember. "This was your 7th birthday," Eleanor said, pointing to a photo of 2 identical children blowing out candles. "You insisted on a dinosaur cake. Andrew wanted astronauts, but you won the argument." Sophia studied the little girl's face, her face, and felt nothing. "I wish I could remember. I'm trying, Mom. I really am." The word Mom came out awkwardly, still unfamiliar on her tongue. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears every time Sophia said it, torn between joy at hearing it and pain at how forced it sounded. It was during one of these photo sessions that the next major memory surfaced. Eleanor had pulled out an album from the week before the disappearance. "This was at the spring festival. We went as a family. You and Andrew won a goldfish at the ring toss. Do you remember?" Sophia looked at the photo. There she was, gap-toothed grin, holding a plastic bag with an orange fish inside. Andrew was beside her, and behind them, the room tilted. "She was there," Sophia whispered, her finger trembling as it pointed to someone in the background of the photo, a teenager with dark hair, standing near a booth, watching the camera with an unreadable expression. "Rebecca." "Of course she was, dear," Eleanor said gently. "Rebecca came with us that day. She often joined our family outings." But Sophia's breathing had gone ragged. Another fragment was surfacing, sharper than before, a memory that felt real, solid, terrifying, a hand gripping her wrist, a voice saying, "Come on, don't make a scene," being pulled away from the crowd, looking back and seeing that same dark-haired teenager watching her go, arms crossed, expression cold. "She was at the farmer's market," Sophia said, her voice barely audible. "The day I disappeared, Rebecca was there." Eleanor frowned. "I don't think so, honey. We would have remembered if she was there." Sophia stood abruptly, the album falling to the floor. "I saw her. I remember her face. Watching me? She was. God, why was she just watching?" Andrew had been quiet until now, but Sophia's words sent ice through his veins. He'd been waiting for the detective's full report, but he'd already learned enough to raise serious questions. Rebecca had told the family she'd been at a friend's house the day of the disappearance, but cell tower records from that time, painstakingly retrieved, placed her phone near the farmer's market. "Sophia, are you sure?" Andrew asked carefully. "No, I'm not sure about anything anymore. Maybe I'm making it up. Maybe my brain is just trying to fill in the blanks with faces I know now." She pressed her hands to her temples. "I can't tell what's real and what I'm imagining." Eleanor tried to calm her, but Sophia was spiraling, caught in the frustration of memories that felt significant, but wouldn't fully surface. She excused herself and retreated to her room, the room that had been decorated for an 8-year-old girl who never came home, now awkwardly updated for the stranger who'd returned. Andrew found his mother in the library later, carefully placing the fallen photographs back in their album. "Do you remember Rebecca being at the market that day?" he asked. Eleanor looked up, confused by the question. "No, she was supposed to be at Jessica Morgan's house. Why?" "Just wondering." Andrew's mind was racing. "Mom, I need to ask you something. After Sophia disappeared, did Rebecca's behavior change at all?" "Change how, Andrew? What are you getting at?" "I don't know yet, just humor me." Eleanor thought for a moment. "Well, she became more involved with the family. She'd always been close. But after Sophia," she stepped up, She was only 15, but she tried so hard to help. She'd come over after school and sit with me while I cried. She helped your father at the office on weekends. It was like she was trying to fill the void, I suppose, or insert herself into it. Andrew thought but didn't say. His phone buzzed. A text from the detective. Need to meet? Found the man who took her. He's willing to talk. Andrew's blood ran cold. I have to go, work emergency. He met the detective, James Reeves, at a coffee shop across town. James slid a folder across the table. His name is Martin Pierce. He's 53 now, dying of liver cancer. Apparently his conscience has been eating at him for years, and he wants to clear it before he goes. Where is he? Hospice care, about 2 hours from here. He contacted me after seeing news coverage of Sophia's return, said he had information about her disappearance. James paused. Andrew, you need to prepare yourself. What he told me, it's going to change everything. Just tell me. He says he was paid to take Sophia, not by some random criminal or trafficking ring. He was paid by someone who knew the family, someone who knew exactly when and where to find her. Andrew's hands clenched into fists. Who? He wouldn't say over the phone. Says he'll only talk to you directly. He's got documents, apparently proof. James hesitated. There's something else. He described the person who hired him. A teenage girl with dark hair and cold eyes. Said she was calm as ice when she explained what she wanted done. The coffee shop seemed to fade away. Andrew could only hear his own heartbeat, thundering in his ears. I need to see him now. I figured I already arranged it. We can leave in an hour. Andrew drove home in a daze. He found Sophia in the garden, sitting on a stone bench, staring at nothing. I'm starting to remember more, she said without looking at him. Little things, the smell of popcorn at the market, a blue car, someone's perfume, something floral and expensive, and her face. I keep seeing her face. Rebecca's. Sophia finally looked at him, and her eyes were haunted. She did something, didn't she? I can feel it. Every time she's in a room with me, my skin crawls. My body remembers even if my mind doesn't. Andrew sat beside her. I'm going to talk to someone today. Someone who might have answers about what really happened to you. If I'm right about this, Sophia, it's going to be bad. Really bad. Tell me. Not yet. Not until I'm sure, but I promise you. Whatever the truth is, we'll face it together. Sophia took his hand, and they sat in silence, two siblings bound by tragedy and time, both terrified of what they were about to learn. That evening, Andrew drove 2 hours to a small hospice facility that smelled of antiseptic and dying flowers. Martin Pierce was in a private room, hooked up to machines that monitored his failing body. He looked like a skeleton draped in skin, but his eyes were sharp and clear. You're Andrew Harrington, he said, his voice weak but steady. I am. You said you have information about my sister. I do, and God help me. I've carried this guilt for 20 years. Martin gestured weakly to a manila envelope on the bedside table. It's all in there. The emails, the bank transfers, everything. I kept it, insurance that she wouldn't come after me. But I'm dying now, so it doesn't matter anymore. Andrew's hands shook as he opened the envelope. Inside were printouts of emails from an account under a fake name, but the IP address had been traced. Bank records showing payments totaling $50,000, and photographs. Surveillance photos of the Harrington family at various outings, including the farmer's market. She was 15 years old, Martin said. 15. And she sat across from me in a coffee shop and told me exactly how to snatch a kid from a crowded market without anyone noticing. She had it all planned out. Timing, location, everything. Said I should take the girl and drop her at a bus station 2 states away. Make sure she couldn't find her way back. Why did you do it? Money? I was desperate, facing bankruptcy. She offered enough to save me. I told myself the kid would be fine, that someone would find her and take care of her. I'm a monster, Mr. Harrington. I know that. But that girl who hired me, she's something worse. She looked me in the eye and smiled while she described separating a child from her family. Andrew could barely breathe. Who was it? Give me a name. Martin met his eyes. Her name was Rebecca Moore. Andrew sat in his car outside the hospice for 20 minutes. Martin Pierce's confession playing on repeat in his mind. The manila envelope felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in his lap. Rebecca, his cousin, the woman who'd been like an older sister to him, the person who'd held his mother while she sobbed, who'd helped his father keep the business running, who'd been there through every dark moment of the past 20 years. She'd orchestrated all of it. He pulled out his phone and called James Reeves. "I need you to get Martin's statement on record. Official, legal, everything. And I need you to dig deeper into Rebecca's finances from back then. If she paid him $50,000 at 15 years old, that money came from somewhere. Already on it. Andrew, there's more." I pulled Rebecca's phone records from that week. The phone was registered under her mother's name, but the usage patterns match what we'd expect from a teenager. She made 3 calls to a burner phone the day before Sophia disappeared. That burner also received calls from Martin Pierce's old number. Andrew's grip on the steering wheel tightened until his knuckles went white. She planned it down to the last detail. "Looks like it. What do you want to do?" "I need to confront her. But first, I need to tell my parents." "Andrew, wait. Let me finish building the case. We need... My sister is living in the same house as the woman who destroyed her childhood. I'm not waiting another second." He hung up and drove home in the dark, his mind a hurricane of rage and betrayal and sickening understanding. All those years of Rebecca being the perfect niece, the devoted family member, the one who stepped up when everyone else was falling apart. It had all been an act, a long con to secure her place in a family she'd deliberately fractured. The estate was quiet when Andrew arrived. It was nearly midnight. He found his father still awake in the study, reviewing contracts with a glass of whiskey beside him. "Andrew, what are you doing up so late?" Andrew closed the study door behind him and locked it. "Dad, I need you to listen to everything I'm about to tell you, and I need you to stay calm until I'm finished." Michael's expression shifted to concern. "You're scaring me, son." "Good. You should be scared." Andrew set the envelope on the desk. "I found the man who kidnapped Sophia. His name is Martin Pierce. He's dying and he wanted to confess before he goes." Michael's face went ashen. "What? How did you—" "He contacted my investigator after seeing news about Sophia's return, Dad. He didn't act alone. Someone paid him. Someone planned the whole thing." Andrew's voice cracked. It was Rebecca. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael just stared at him, the words not seeming to register. "That's not possible," Michael finally said. "Rebecca was 15. She loved Sophia. She helped us search for her. She orchestrated it." Andrew opened the envelope and spread the contents across the desk. Email records, bank transfers, his testimony. She paid him $50,000 to snatch Sophia from the farmer's market and abandon her where she couldn't find her way home. She planned every detail. Michael's hands shook as he picked up the documents, his eyes scanning them with growing horror. No. There has to be some mistake. Why would she? Because she was jealous. Because she wanted to be the one you loved. Because she spent 20 years playing the role of the devoted niece while knowing exactly where Sophia was and what she'd done to her. A sound from the doorway made them both turn. Eleanor stood there in her nightgown, her face pale. I heard raised voices. "What's going on?" Andrew's heart sank. He hadn't wanted his mother to find out like this, but there was no hiding it now. "Eleanor, sit down," Michael said gently, but his voice was hollow. She came into the study, her eyes moving between them with growing fear. "Someone tell me what's happening." Michael showed her the documents with shaking hands. Andrew watched his mother's face as she read, watched the disbelief turn to comprehension. Comprehension to horror. Horror to a rage he'd never seen from her before. "That little bitch!" Eleanor hissed, and Andrew actually flinched. He'd never heard his mother curse in his life. "She sat in my kitchen and cried with me. She held my hand at Sophia's memorial service. She looked me in the eyes and pretended to grieve while she knew. She knew where my baby was." "We need to call the police," Michael said, reaching for the phone. "Wait." Andrew put his hand over his father's. "I want to talk to her first. I want to hear her admit it. I want to know why. Andrew, if she's capable of this, she's dangerous. She's not going to hurt me. She's had 20 years to be part of this family. She won't give that up without a fight, but she won't risk violence. Let me talk to her. Then we call the police." It took another hour of argument, but Andrew eventually convinced his parents. They would confront Rebecca together in the study. The next morning, they would record everything, and then they would hand her over to the authorities. None of them slept that night. Andrew spent the dark hours sitting with Sophia, who'd woken from another nightmare. He didn't tell her yet. She was already so fragile, so uncertain of her place in this world. Learning that someone in the family had deliberately destroyed her childhood might break her completely. "I keep seeing her face," Sophia whispered, curled up beside him on the sofa in her room. "In my dreams, in my memories. She's always there, watching, like she was waiting for something." "You're safe now," Andrew promised, even as guilt tore through him. How could he have missed it? How had none of them seen what Rebecca really was? Morning came too slowly and too fast. At 8 a.m., Rebecca arrived for her usual Tuesday meeting with Michael. She looked perfectly put together as always. Tailored suit, flawless makeup, professional smile. "Good morning, Uncle Michael." "Andrew, I didn't expect to see you here. Don't you have that conference call with the Tokyo office?" "It got canceled," Andrew said flatly. "We need to talk to you about something, in the study." Something flickered in Rebecca's eyes. Wariness, maybe, or calculation. But she smiled and followed them in. "Of course. Is everything all right?" Eleanor was already waiting, standing by the window with her arms crossed. When Rebecca saw her expression, the smile finally faltered. "What's going on?" Michael gestured to a chair. "Sit down, Rebecca. I'd rather stand." "Sit down." The steel in his voice made her comply. Andrew positioned himself between Rebecca and the door. He'd disabled the lock from the inside. She wasn't leaving until they had answers. "We spoke to someone yesterday," Andrew began, his voice cold. "Martin Pierce. Does that name mean anything to you?" Rebecca's face remained perfectly composed, but Andrew saw her hands tighten on the arms of the chair. "Should it?" "He's the man you paid to kidnap Sophia 20 years ago." The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Rebecca didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even seem to breathe. Then she laughed. It was a brittle, desperate sound that made Andrew's skin crawl. "That's absurd. You're accusing me of..." "What?" "Orchestrating my own cousin's kidnapping when I was 15. Do you hear how insane that sounds?" "We have proof," Michael said, his voice breaking. "Emails, bank records, his testimony. Rebecca, please tell us this is some kind of mistake." Rebecca's mask cracked. Andrew saw panic flash across her face, followed by something that looked like calculation. She was thinking fast, trying to find an angle, a way out. "Let me see this supposed proof." Andrew handed her the envelope. He watched her face as she read, watched the moment she realized the evidence was real and damning. Her hands started to shake. "Where did you get $50,000 at 15? Eleanor asked, her voice like ice. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "My college fund, the one my parents left me when they died. I told the executor I needed it for boarding school expenses. You used your inheritance to destroy our family." Eleanor's voice rose. "Why, what did we ever do to you? What did you do?" Rebecca's head snapped up, and suddenly the mask was completely gone. Raw emotion twisted her features. Pain and anger and something desperate. "You had everything. The perfect family, the perfect twins, the big estate, the legacy. I was just the orphaned niece you took in out of obligation. I lived in your shadow. We loved you," Michael said, his voice breaking. "You loved them." Rebecca stood, gesturing wildly. Sophia and Andrew were all anyone cared about. The precious Harrington twins. I was invisible unless they needed something, and then one of them would be gone, and you'd finally see me. You'd finally need me. The study door opened. Sophia stood there, having heard everything. Her face was deadly pale. Rebecca froze when she saw her. "You destroyed my life because you wanted attention." Sophia's voice was shaking with rage. "You stole my childhood, my memories, my family. You left me alone and scared with no idea who I was. All because you were jealous." "Sophia..." Rebecca took a step forward, but Andrew blocked her path. "You don't get to talk to her. You don't get to explain or justify or apologize. You're done." Rebecca's face crumpled. "I was 15. I didn't understand what I was doing. I thought she'd be found quickly, that she'd come home, and you'd all realize how much you needed me. But then days passed. and weeks, and she didn't come back, and I couldn't undo it. So you just lived with it, Eleanor said, disgust dripping from every word. You lived in our home, ate at our table, pretended to love us, all while knowing you'd destroyed us. I do love you. That's what you don't understand. I did it because I loved you and wanted to be part of you, and I didn't know how else. Get out, Michael said quietly. Uncle Michael, get out of my house now before I have you arrested right here. Rebecca looked at each of them in turn. Michael's cold rage, Eleanor's disgust, Andrew's hatred, and finally Sophia's devastated face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. You will be, Andrew promised, because I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what you did. Rebecca didn't leave quietly. She stood in the doorway of the study, her perfectly composed facade completely shattered, mascara streaking down her cheeks. You can't do this. You can't just throw me out after everything I've done for this family. Everything you've done. Michael's voice was dangerously low. You mean running my company while knowing you'd ripped my daughter away from me? Comforting my wife while hiding the fact that you'd orchestrated her worst nightmare? You're right, Rebecca. You've done plenty. I was a child. Rebecca's voice rose. Desperate now. I made a mistake when I was 15 years old. People make mistakes. Are you really going to destroy my entire life over something I did half my lifetime ago? Eleanor moved forward, and for a moment Andrew thought his mother might actually strike Rebecca, but she stopped inches away, her voice trembling with controlled fury. You had 20 years to tell the truth, 20 years to come clean, to help us find her, to fix what you broke. Instead, you buried yourself deeper into this family, took advantage of our grief, built your entire life on our pain. That wasn't a mistake, Rebecca. That was a choice you made every single day. Sophia had been silent, pressed against the wall, but now she spoke, her voice eerily calm. I remember now. Not everything, but enough. You were there that day at the market. I saw you watching me, and when that man grabbed my hand and started pulling me away, I looked back at you. I thought you would help me. I thought you would scream or tell my parents or do something, but you just stood there. You just watched him take me. Rebecca's face crumpled. I thought he would just take you for a few hours. He was supposed to leave you somewhere safe where you'd be found quickly. I didn't know you'd lose your memory. I didn't know you'd end up in an orphanage for 20 years. I swear I didn't want, but you did nothing to fix it. Andrew cut in. When weeks went by and she didn't come home, you could have told the police what you'd done. We could have tracked Pierce, found Sophia, brought her home, but you stayed quiet. You let us suffer. You let an 8-year-old girl grow up alone and afraid, because you were too selfish to face the consequences of what you'd done. Rebecca wrapped her arms around herself, and for a moment, she looked like that 15-year-old girl again. Lost, desperate, broken. I wanted to tell you so many times, every birthday, every Christmas, every time Aunt Eleanor cried herself to sleep. I wanted to confess, but I was terrified. I thought if you knew the truth, you'd hate me, and you were all I had. I couldn't lose you. So instead, you let us lose Sophia, Michael said quietly. Your fear was more important than a child's life. I'm calling the police. Andrew pulled out his phone. Wait. Rebecca's voice was sharp with panic. Please, just give me a chance to explain everything. There's more to this than you know. More? What more could there possibly be? Eleanor demanded. Rebecca's hands were shaking. The money, the $50,000. It wasn't just my college fund, Uncle Michael. You gave it to me, don't you remember? You set it up as a trust for my education after my parents died. But there was another deposit, a large one, shortly before Sophia disappeared. Michael frowned. What are you talking about? Check the records. Someone else contributed to that fund. Someone who knew what I was planning. A chill ran down Andrew's spine. You're lying. You're making this up to deflect blame. I'm not. Rebecca was crying now, desperate, cornered. I didn't come up with this plan alone. I was 15 and stupid and jealous. Yes, but someone else pushed me. Someone else told me it would work, that it would be easy, that Sophia would be fine. Who? Michael demanded. Rebecca opened her mouth, then closed it. Fear flashed across her face. Genuine fear. I can't. They'll what? Andrew moved closer. Rebecca, if there's someone else involved, you need to tell us right now. But before Rebecca could answer, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and the color drained from her face completely. What is it? Eleanor asked. Nothing, I have to go. Rebecca moved toward the door, but Andrew blocked her path. You're not going anywhere. Let me pass, Andrew. Please. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then explain it to us. Rebecca looked at him with eyes full of genuine terror. I can't. If I tell you, if any of you know, they'll hurt you. They'll destroy everything. Just let me go and I'll disappear. You'll never have to see me again. Not good enough, Michael said. You're going to tell us everything, or I'm calling the police right now. Rebecca's phone buzzed again, then again. She looked at it, and something in her expression changed. The fear gave way to resignation, then to a strange kind of relief. Fine, she said quietly. You want the whole truth? I'll give you the whole truth, but you're going to wish I hadn't. She sat back down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When she spoke, her voice was hollow. I didn't act alone. The person who helped me plan Sophia's kidnapping, who encouraged me, who told me exactly how to do it and promised me it would all work out. She paused, taking a shaky breath. It was my mother, my real mother. The woman you all think died in a car accident 23 years ago. The room went silent. Andrew felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. That's impossible, Michael said. Diane died. We went to her funeral. We saw her. You saw a closed casket, Rebecca interrupted. You saw what she wanted you to see. She faked her death, Uncle Michael. She's been alive this whole time, watching, waiting, pulling strings. Eleanor's hand went to her mouth. Why would she do that? Because she hated you, Rebecca said simply. She hated that you had the Harrington name, the money, the status. She was married to Dad for 10 years, and she never felt like part of this family. When Dad died in that accident, she lost everything. The will left most of his estate to me in trust. With you as executor, she got a small settlement. It destroyed her. So she faked her own death. Andrew couldn't believe what he was hearing. She made it look like suicide. Left a note. The car went off a bridge into the river. They never found a body. Rebecca's voice was mechanical now, reciting facts. She contacted me 6 months later, told me she'd been watching the family, that she had a plan to get back what was rightfully ours. All I had to do was remove one of the twins, the favorite child, make the family incomplete. Then I could step in and become indispensable. And you believed her. Sophia's voice was ice. I was grieving. I was angry. She was my mother, and she told me it would be okay, that Sophia wouldn't really be hurt, that it was justice. Rebecca's voice rose. I was 15 and broken, and she manipulated me into thinking this was the right thing to do. Michael was shaking his head slowly. Even if this is true, and that's a massive if, you still made the choice. You still went through with it. I know, Rebecca's voice broke. I know what I did, and I've lived with it every day for 20 years. But she's still out there. She's still watching, and if you expose me, she'll disappear again, and you'll never find her. She'll make sure of that. Andrew's phone buzzed. A text from James Reeves. Just got word. Rebecca Moore was seen meeting with an unidentified woman 3 times in the past month. Getting surveillance footage now. Where is she? Andrew demanded. Where's your mother right now? Rebecca looked at her phone again, then at Andrew with defeated eyes. She's here, in the city. She's been here the whole time, waiting to see if Sophia's return would destroy me. And now that it has, she laughed bitterly. Now she's probably planning her exit strategy. You're going to call her, Michael said. Right now, you're going to arrange a meeting. She'll know it's a trap. I don't care. Call her. Rebecca stared at her phone for a long moment. Then, with shaking hands, she dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a woman's voice answered, smooth and cold. Hello, darling. I've been waiting for your call. Rebecca put the phone on speaker with trembling hands. Mom, we need to talk. I'm sure we do. I assume the Harringtons know everything now? Michael's face went white. It was Diane's voice, older but unmistakable. Yes, Rebecca whispered. Then I suppose the game is over. 20 years was a good run, don't you think? Diane's laugh was cruel. Tell Michael I said hello. Tell him I'm sorry I couldn't attend Sophia's homecoming party. I'm sure it was touching. Where are you? Michael demanded. Closer than you think, Michael. I've always been close, watching you rebuild your life, watching you grieve, watching you pour all your love into the daughter who remained while the one I helped disappear was suffering alone. It's been quite entertaining. Sophia made a small sound of pain. Eleanor pulled her close, both of them trembling. You're a monster, Andrew said. No, dear boy. I'm just a woman who took what should have been mine. Rebecca's father owed me more than a paltry settlement. He owed me the Harrington legacy, and if I couldn't have it, her voice went cold. Then why should Eleanor? The line went dead. The police arrived within 20 minutes of Michael's call. Detective Sarah Martinez had handled hundreds of cases in her 15 years with the force. But even she looked shocked as she listened to the recording of Diane's call. She admitted to conspiracy to kidnap a child, and she's taunting you about it, Martinez said, shaking her head. Either she's incredibly arrogant or she thinks she's untouchable. She's been hiding for 23 years, Andrew said. She's smart. She wouldn't have called if she thought we could actually catch her. Rebecca sat in the corner of the study, flanked by 2 officers. She'd stopped crying, her face now a blank mask. She has multiple identities, bank accounts all over the world. She taught me how to disappear if I ever needed to. She won't be easy to find. Then help us find her, Martinez said. You want any chance at a reduced sentence? You cooperate fully. Where does she stay when she's in the city? Rebecca was silent for a long moment. Then, the Grandview Hotel, room 412. She's been there for 3 weeks, watching. Martinez immediately radioed for backup. Within the hour, a team was dispatched to the hotel. Andrew wanted to go with them, but Martinez refused. This is a police matter now. Mr. Harrington, you need to let us do our job. So they waited. The family gathered in the living room. Michael, Eleanor, Andrew, and Sophia, while Rebecca remained in the study with 2 officers standing guard. The silence was suffocating. I can't believe Diane is alive, Eleanor said for the 10th time, her voice hollow. All these years, we mourned her. We told Rebecca stories about her mother, and she was out there, orchestrating everything. She must have been watching when I found Sophia, Andrew said. That's why Rebecca panicked. She knew her mother would see it as a failure. Sophia hadn't spoken since the phone call. She sat curled up on the sofa, her knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. Andrew moved to sit beside her. Hey, you okay? I don't know what I am anymore, Sophia whispered. All of this, the kidnapping, the conspiracy, the hate, it was all because someone was jealous. Because someone wanted money. My entire childhood was stolen over something so petty. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And Rebecca, Sophia's voice broke. Part of me wants to hate her. She destroyed my life. But she was just a kid. A manipulated, grieving kid who made a terrible choice. Eleanor reached over and took Sophia's hand. You don't have to forgive her, sweetheart. No one expects that. I don't think I can. But I also can't help wondering what would have happened if someone had helped her instead of using her. If Diane had been a real mother instead of a monster, Detective Martinez called 2 hours later. Her voice was tight with frustration. The hotel room was empty, cleaned out. She left about 40 minutes before we arrived. Someone must have tipped her off. Impossible, Michael said. The only people who knew were in this house. Then she had the room bugged. Or she was watching somehow. Either way, she's in the wind. Andrew felt rage surge through him. So that's it. She just walks away. We've issued warrants. Federal authorities are involved now. We'll find her, Mr. Harrington. It might take time, but we'll find her. But even as Martinez said the words, Andrew could hear the doubt in her voice. Diane had evaded detection for 23 years. What were the chances they'd catch her now? Rebecca was formally arrested that evening as the officers led her out in handcuffs. She stopped in front of Sophia. I know you'll never forgive me, Rebecca said quietly. I don't expect you to, but I want you to know. I'm glad you're home. I'm glad you're safe. And I'm sorry for everything. Sophia looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd been both victim and villain. I hope you find a way to live with what you've done, because I have to find a way to live with what was done to me. Rebecca nodded, tears streaming down her face, and let the officers guide her out. The next few days were a blur of police statements, legal consultations, and media attention. The story broke nationwide. Harrington heiress orchestrated twin sisters' kidnapping. Reporters camped outside the estate gates. Andrew's phone rang constantly with calls from journalists, old acquaintances, and people claiming to have information about Diane. Through it all, Sophia struggled to find her footing. She'd moved from having no identity to having too much. The lost Harrington daughter, the kidnapping victim, the woman at the center of a national scandal. Eleanor tried to shelter her, but the attention was inescapable. "I want to go back," Sophia said one night, when it all became too much. She and Andrew were sitting in the library, the one room that felt safe from the chaos outside. Back to my apartment, my job, my simple life where nobody knew who I was. You can't go back, not really. That life was built on not knowing who you were. But I knew who I was. I was Valerie. I had friends, routines, a purpose. Now I'm Sophia Harrington, and I don't know what that means. I don't know how to be rich. I don't know how to be part of this family. I don't fit here. You'll learn. We'll help you. Will I, though? Sophia looked at him with exhausted eyes. Or will I always be the girl who doesn't remember, who doesn't belong, who's just playing a role in someone else's life? Andrew didn't have an answer for that. The legal proceedings moved forward. Rebecca was charged with conspiracy to commit kidnapping, child endangerment, and a dozen other crimes. Her lawyers argued for leniency based on her age at the time of the crime and the manipulation she'd suffered from her mother. The prosecution pushed for the maximum sentence. Martin Pierce passed away 3 weeks after giving his testimony. His conscience finally clear. His death made the case more complicated. Without him to testify in person, the defense argued that his recorded statement should be inadmissible. But between the financial records, the emails, and Rebecca's own confession, the case against her was solid. Michael established a fund in Sophia's name to support organizations that helped missing children and those who'd aged out of foster care. It was a way to turn tragedy into something meaningful, though nothing could truly make up for what was lost. Eleanor slowly regained her health and strength, channeling her energy into reconnecting with Sophia. They spent hours together, Eleanor sharing stories and photos, Sophia listening and trying to absorb a childhood she couldn't remember. But the question of Diane hung over everything. The FBI tracked leads across the country. A woman matching her description in Seattle, a financial transaction in Miami, a possible sighting in Toronto. Each lead went nowhere. Diane had perfected the art of disappearing. Then, 6 weeks after Sophia's return, a package arrived at the estate. No return address, postmarked from Mexico City. Inside was a single photograph. Diane, younger, standing beside Rebecca's father on the back. Written in elegant script, "Tell my daughter I'm proud of how long she kept our secret. And tell Sophia, sorry, not sorry." Andrew wanted to hunt her down himself, but Michael stopped him. "She wants us to chase her. She wants to keep us trapped in this, looking over our shoulders forever. We're not going to give her that satisfaction." So we just let her go. We let the authorities handle it, and we focus on healing our family. That's the only revenge that matters. Showing her that she didn't break us. It was easier said than done. Rebecca's trial was set for 4 months later. In the meantime, she remained in custody, her bail denied due to flight risk. Andrew visited her once, against his better judgment. She looked smaller in the orange jumpsuit, her perfect veneer completely gone. "Why did you really do it?" he asked. "Was it all just for attention? For money?" Rebecca considered the question. "I think I wanted to matter. My whole life, I felt like a footnote in the Harrington story. When my dad died, I lost my place in the narrative. And my mother, she made me believe that destroying someone else's happiness was the only way to create my own. I was wrong. God, I was so wrong. But by the time I realized it, I was in too deep to find my way back. You could have told the truth at any time. I know, and that's what I have to live with. Not just what I did, but what I didn't do. All those years I could have brought Sophia home and chose not to. That's the real crime." Andrew left without forgiving her. He didn't know if he ever could, but as he drove away from the jail, he thought about Sophia's words. Rebecca had been a victim too. Not in the same way, not to the same degree, but Diane had used her daughter as a weapon, shaped her into something broken, and then abandoned her to face the consequences alone. There were no winners in this story, only survivors trying to figure out how to move forward. 6 months later, the Harrington estate looked different in the early morning light. Spring had arrived, bringing with it new growth and the promise of renewal. Sophia stood in the garden, watching the sun rise over the fields, her silver ring catching the first rays of light. She still had the nightmares sometimes, still woke up disoriented, caught between being Valerie and being Sophia, but they were getting less frequent. The therapist Dr. Chen had recommended said it was normal, the brain's way of processing trauma and integrating two fractured identities into something whole. Thought I'd find you out here. Sophia turned to see Andrew approaching, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He wore his own ring now, no longer locked away in a box. They'd started wearing them together, a daily reminder that they'd found each other again. Couldn't sleep, Sophia admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. Too much on my mind. Rebecca's sentencing is today. I know. The trial had lasted 3 weeks. The jury had deliberated for only 6 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. Now, Judge Patricia Morrison would decide Rebecca's fate. The prosecution was pushing for 20 years. The defense argued for 10, with consideration for rehabilitation. Are you going? Andrew asked. Sophia had been wrestling with that question for days. Part of her wanted to be there, to see justice served. But another part, the part that was trying to heal, wondered if going would just reopen wounds that were slowly starting to close. I don't know yet. Mom says she'll support whatever I decide. Eleanor had changed too, over these months. The fragile woman who'd nearly fainted at Sophia's return had found strength she didn't know she possessed. She'd thrown herself into helping Sophia adjust, into therapy sessions, into advocacy work for missing children. Grief had almost destroyed her once. This time, she'd chosen to let it transform her instead. Dad's going, Andrew said. He feels like he needs to be there, to represent the family. Michael had aged visibly in the past 6 months. The betrayal had hit him hardest. Rebecca had been like a daughter to him, and learning the depth of her deception had shaken his faith in his own judgment. But he was working through it, slowly learning to trust again. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the day begin. Somewhere out there, Diane was still free, still hiding. The FBI had leads, always leads, but nothing concrete. She'd become a ghost again, and Andrew had learned to accept that some ghosts couldn't be caught. What mattered was this: the garden, the coffee, his sister beside him, the family slowly knitting itself back together. I think I'll go, Sophia said finally. To the sentencing. I need to see it end. Then I'll go with you. The courtroom was packed when they arrived. Media, spectators, and family members of other missing children who'd followed the case closely. Michael was already there, sitting in the front row with Eleanor. They'd saved seats for Andrew and Sophia. Rebecca was led in wearing a simple gray suit, her hair pulled back, her face pale but composed. When she saw the Harringtons, something flickered across her expression. Regret, maybe, or resignation. Judge Morrison called the court to order. She was a stern woman in her 60s, known for being fair but unforgiving. She'd read every document, heard every testimony. Now she would decide. Rebecca Moore, you've been found guilty of conspiracy to commit kidnapping, child endangerment, and obstruction of justice. Before I pass sentence, is there anything you'd like to say? Rebecca stood, her hands clasped in front of her. She looked directly at Sophia. I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back the childhood I stole or the memories I helped erase. I can spend the rest of my life apologizing, and it still won't be enough. Her voice cracked. I was 15 and broken and manipulated, but I still made a choice. I chose to hurt you, and then I chose, every day for 20 years, to stay silent, to let you suffer while I built a life on your family's pain. Tears streamed down her face now. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that finding out you were alive, that you'd survived, that you'd come home, It was the first time in 20 years that I could breathe, because at least I hadn't destroyed you completely. At least there was a chance for you to be whole again." She turned to Michael and Eleanor. "Uncle Michael, Aunt Eleanor, you gave me a home when I had nothing. You loved me when I was unlovable, and I repaid you with the worst betrayal imaginable. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Eleanor was crying silently. Michael's jaw was tight, his hands clenched. Andrew felt Sophia's hand find his and squeeze. Judge Morrison let the silence settle before speaking. "Mrs. Moore, you were indeed young when you committed this crime, and it's clear you were under the influence of a manipulative parent. However, you also had 20 years to correct your mistake, 20 years to tell the truth. You chose not to." She paused, consulting her notes. "The court has a responsibility to balance justice with mercy, punishment with rehabilitation. What you did was calculate and cruel, but you were also a child shaped by trauma and manipulation. Taking all factors into consideration, I hereby sentence you to 15 years in federal prison, with possibility of parole after 10 years. Contingent on full cooperation in locating Diane Moore and continued psychological treatment." Rebecca's shoulders sagged with relief. 15 years was harsh, but it could have been worse. Much worse. As the officers led her away, Rebecca looked back one more time. Her eyes met Sophia's, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not quite, but perhaps understanding. Two victims of the same woman, both trying to survive in different ways. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. Andrew shielded Sophia from the cameras as they made their way to the car. Once inside, Sophia finally let herself cry. "It's over," Eleanor said softly, reaching back from the front seat to hold her daughter's hand. "It's finally over, sweetheart." But it wasn't. Not really. Diane was still out there. The scars were still fresh. Sophia still struggled with her identity. Still had days where she wanted to run back to her old life and forget she was ever a Harrington. But as they drove back to the estate, Andrew looked at his sister and saw something he hadn't seen before. Peace. Fragile but real that evening, the family gathered in the garden where it had all begun months ago. No reporters, no lawyers, no police. Just the four of them, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and amber. "I've been thinking," Sophia said, breaking the comfortable silence, "about the orphanage where I grew up, St. Catherine's. It's underfunded, overcrowded. The kids there deserve better. We could help," Michael said immediately. "The foundation? I want to do more than write a check. I want to work there, volunteer, maybe eventually run programs for kids aging out of the system. They need someone who understands what it's like." Eleanor smiled through her tears. "That's beautiful, honey. We'll support you however we can." Andrew pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photo he'd been meaning to show Sophia, the picture from their 7th birthday. Both of them grinning at the camera, rings visible on their hands. "Look how happy we were," he said softly. Sophia studied the photo, and for the first time, Andrew saw recognition in her eyes. Not a memory exactly, but a feeling, a sense of belonging. "We can be happy again," she said. "It won't be the same. We're not those kids anymore, but we can build something new, something stronger." The sun dipped below the horizon, and the silver rings on their hands caught the last light of day. Two hearts intertwined, separated by cruelty and time, but never truly broken. Michael raised his glass. They'd opened a bottle of wine to mark the day. To Sophia, "Welcome home, sweetheart. For real this time. To family," Eleanor added. "To healing. To second chances." Andrew looked at his sister. This woman who was both stranger and soulmate, and felt something settle in his chest. The ache of 20 years didn't disappear, but it transformed into something bearable, something almost like hope. "To the future," he said. They clinked glasses as stars began to appear overhead. Somewhere in the darkness, Diane was hiding, running, living with her own demons. Let her run, let her hide. Here, in this garden, surrounded by people who loved her, Sophia Harrington had finally found her way home. And the ring that had stopped time now marked the beginning of something new. Not a return to what was lost, but a journey toward what could be. Together, they watched the night fall, 4 survivors holding on to each other, holding on to hope, holding on to the unbreakable truth that love, real love, could weather any storm. The nightmare was over,